All right, welcome to Group Thinkers, the podcast from Arcade Group. I am your host, Justin McCord. With me, as always, is Ronnie Richard. And on today's episode, we have he said not a pioneer. I'm going to say he's a pioneer. Tony Martignetti of Nonprofit Radio. He is a pioneer in the nonprofit marketing landscape in terms of podcasting, but he's more than that and has a super interesting story. Ronnie, tell us a little bit about Tony.
Yeah, like you said, Tony has a incredibly interesting story. So he graduated from college and he was there on behalf of the Air Force. And so he joined the Air Force, and he tells us a little bit about this on our episode. Held the launch keys to nuclear missiles. So, I mean, that's a pretty hefty responsibility. I'm thinking about myself coming out of college. I don't know if I would have wanted my younger self to be in charge of that, but then he after serving, he came back and went to law school, started a law career, didn't find that to be very fulfilling, and then kind of got into planned giving and working at universities, and it's really taken off from there. And he started the podcast, and he kind of has this theme that he talks about where he learns something and then he just keeps going with it because he doesn't want to learn something new. So yeah, there's definitely that kind of running through the entire episode.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny, Ronnie. I've known of Tony for a long time from his presence and association with the Nonprofit Technology Network and physical presence on site, conducting interviews and live streaming from the NTC conference, and so it's interesting to unpack his story for me and learn his path into this nonprofit radio space. Some things to listen for. One is the element of curiosity, and so how that plays into it. Second is, as you said, the long game. Starting your career, starting your nonprofit career in plan giving consulting is not a traditional path, let's say, and it's definitely learning the long game really quick. But so is starting a podcast in 2010 and continuing to do it 650 episodes later. That's the long game. And then the last thing that stood out to me is the role that inspiration plays. And there's kind of this interesting cycle of curiosity in the long game into inspiration that I find to be moving as a part of Tony's his work.
Yeah, same. I mean, he talks about the people who have inspired him, the donors who inspire him, all have kind of found contentment in their life. And so, like you said, it's this cycle of curiosity. It's seeking something. He's seeking contentment, and it's really fascinating to kind of hear that thread run through everything. So everyone, yeah, here's our episode with Tony Martignetti. Enjoy.
Ronnie, have you ever been intimidated by one of our guests?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I Tony, we're not intimidated. We're not
I hope
intimidated. That's
not.
not
I
it.
hope not.
Let's go with impressed.
Yeah, for sure impressed, but we're,
Different I
here's the
word.
thing. Like we've been at this thing for 4 years. Uh, you're one of the forerunners in audio format for nonprofit marketing discussions.
I was a early adopter, or probably not a pioneer. I was an early adopter of podcasting. Absolutely. I started podcasting in July of 2010.
That's incredible. How many guests have you had on?
Oh, thousands.
Wow.
We're coming up on show number 650 in July, because I do 50 a year times 13 years is 650 shows and
That's
thousands of
incredible,
guests.
man.
Thank
That's
you.
so cool.
Thank you. It's great
That's
fun. It's all for the benefit of small and mid-sized nonprofits.
Yeah, yeah. Tony Martignetti's nonprofit radio. You can find it on all sorts of different platforms, and I think it served even as an inspiration early on in 2018 when we were starting to plan this thing in 2019 and getting it off the ground, and even remembering having been to N10 to NTC in the in the mid 2010s and seeing you recording live. So you are amongst those that have paid attention along the way, just so that you know.
I'm glad. I'm happy to inspire other valuable nonprofit podcasts. Absolutely.
Awesome.
And my secret is, I latch on to something and then I don't let go. Like that's why that's just I figure out how to do something and then I don't want to stop doing it because it's going to require me to learn something new to replace it. I don't want to do that. So
Yeah.
podcasting 13 years. You mentioned N10 and the Nonprofit Technology Conference, NTC. They're great folks there. I still go to their conferences. I was just at the one in Denver 8 weeks ago, and I was doing them, yes, back in 2016 or so, 15 or something like that was my first one. I learned something, and then I don't want to learn something new, so I just stay with it.
That's all right. So today we're going to spend some time, really, as I said beforehand, unpacking, your journey and some of the things that you have held on to along the way, and talk about some of the people that have shaped you, etc. And so, honestly, man, where I want to start, Tony, is I want to start before the radio program. I want to start before the plain giving work, and I want to start with the codes to the nuclear missiles. So, like, if you can just draw a line from that, how you ended up with said codes, and then take us from there into your plane giving career, from the Air Force into plane giving.
I had an ROTC scholarship to Carnegie Mellon University. So that's what got me into the Air Force. The Air Force paid for my college degree, so I owed them time in return. I spent an extra year beyond the 4 required. I spent 5 years in the Air Force, and I was assigned by the United States Air Force to operate Minuteman missile nuclear missiles under the grounds of Warrensburg, Missouri. That's where I was stationed, Whiteman Air Force Base, Warrensburg, Missouri. And you start as a deputy missile combat crew commander, and you work your way up to missile combat crew commander without being the deputy, being the commander. So you have the keys to 10 nuclear missiles. And off duty, the keys, started my Toyota. So they worked, they did double duty. That was my assigned job. I had a degree in economics and information systems from Carnegie Mellon, but I got assigned to Minuteman nuclear missiles. And that's what I did. That's what I did for 5 years in Missouri. Then I went to law school. Loved law school. I wish law school was 4 years instead of only 3. I loved the study of law. Practice of law did not suit me at all. I only lasted 2 years. I was miserable. So I'm still very glad I went to law school. I still encourage people to go to law school. Law is a wonderful career, and there's a lot you can do with a law degree, thankfully, besides practicing law, because I needed an alternative. Practicing law just didn't suit me. Found it to be a very unpleasant way to make a lot of money. So 2 years, then I re-engineered myself into something that where I thought my degree would be helpful, and it was planned giving fundraising. And there's an element.
How did that line connect? Like, how did you get from practicing law to a niche area within the niche area, plane giving within like the nonprofit marketing fundraising space?
Well, desperation breeds creativity. I needed something to make money, and I couldn't stand practicing law much longer. Also, I had a career consulting business. Today, you'd call me a career coach, but from 1994 to 1997, roughly, we didn't have career coaches, so I just called myself a career consultant, and I was helping other lawyers who were miserable practicing law to find a happier life using their skills. And so that business did mediocre. I didn't see the value of networking, and I just paid for a lot of advertising and sat back and waited for the phone to ring. So a lot of lessons learned in that business applied in my current business, thankfully. I can learn. See, but once I learn something, then I don't want to let it go. That's why.
Yeah, you don't want to let it go.
There's the theme. 26 years in planned giving, 13 years podcasting, N10 conferences times coming up on 9 or 10 years. I can't let things go. So
so I'm gonna play it back to the play and giving thing though. It's that you like to play the long game, right? Like that's it. Is that you like playing the long game with it because a big part of playing giving is the art of the long game, of understanding that and the nuances of it. So I think that you just excel at the long game.
You're very gracious. I wish I could say that I was thinking of that at the time. I was not. I was looking for something where I could apply my legal skills, take some of my own career consulting advice. So I looked in fundraising and then specifically planned giving, because there is a legal side to it. But I hasten to add that you do not have to be a lawyer to be successful in planned giving. You don't have to have a lawyer on your board or anywhere near your small or mid-sized nonprofit to be enormously successful in planned giving. That's a very, very important takeaway. That's what led me to planned giving, was the legal side of it. But you don't need to have any expertise or hire it legal expertise to be successful in planned giving.
Yeah.
So you worked in planned giving at universities, right? It was Iona and St. John's, if I remember correctly, and you kind of, I guess you could say, kind of cut your teeth learning planned giving, right? And then you started your own consulting business, helping nonprofits with planned giving. How did that kind of come about? And like, kind of, what did you learn during your time at the universities?
You all did your research. Thank you very much, Ronnie. Yeah, I learned how to launch planned giving programs. You're absolutely right. I started at Iona College, which is now Iona University in New Rochelle, New York, Westchester County, outside New York City, and I launched the planned giving program there. They had nothing, and I got it started. And then I moved after about a year and a half, roughly year and a half, somewhere in there. I moved to St. John's University in Queens County, New York, and launched the planned giving program there. And I stayed there for 5 years, building that, launching it and building that program. So I learned how to launch planned giving programs. I know how to start the promotion, how to motivate the board. That's important around planned giving, how to train the other fundraisers, especially at St. John's. That was a university at the time. It was a much bigger development shop. So I would train my fellow gift officers in opening conversations with their prospects and their donors about the potential of planned gifts. And then we would work together if there was interest. So I learned how to launch, and that's what I've been doing since as a consultant. I started consulting in 2003 when I left St. John's University. So this is my 20th year in consulting and my 26th year in planned giving overall. Can't let go. The guy just can't let go.
Well, you learned something and then you kept doing it, like you said.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
I'm curious though, like, who did you learn it from? Because you said you kind of jumped into this. You didn't know a lot about planned giving. Were there some folks that kind of taught you and explained to you how it works more, or did you kind of like learn on the way? How did that come about?
A lot of the value of a legal education is understanding how to research and learn something new. So someone who practices tax law, may have a contracts issue. So you learn how to research contracts law in your state. So some of it was a good amount was self-taught. I mean, I read books. One of the books is still up on my shelf. And others, I did learn from some people who were teaching planned giving courses. One of them was, he's no longer living. It was I think a pioneer in planned giving, Robert Sharp Sr. And he wrote a book called Planned Giving Simplified. He wrote that book later, but that book is also on my shelf. It's not one that I learned from, but I certainly kept it after I did read it. Robert Sharp, so he was a big influence. And there's a little known man. He's not a little man. He's a giant knowledge wise, but not well known outside tight planned giving circles. And his name is Jonathan Tidd. He's an attorney, and I learned a lot from Jonathan Tidd as well.
What did they teach you that wasn't in the books, or wasn't something that you kind of self-taught from learning the law and the legal side of it, the research?
From Robert Sharp, I learned the relationship side. That was not in this big, probably this is planned giving. Yeah, that's probably a 500-page book. They touched on the relationships, but it was mostly a technical book.
Mhm.
I don't think it's written for lawyers, but it helps that I am a lawyer, and I was a lawyer when I was reading that book in my early years in planned giving. So from Robert Sharp, the relationship side, it's all about people. It's all about listening to people, being curious about people. If you have a curiosity about anything, you'll explore it. And I have a curiosity about people, and I like exploring their histories, their stories, their past, however, whatever you want to call it. So from him, I learned that relationship, the value of relationships. And through the years, I've relationships with donors, of course, with coworkers, former coworkers, and I'm the relationship guy. I'm the guy who still gets our high school class together. Going back to, if I could find our elementary school, I'd probably go back there, because I had a crush on that little girl named Annie in fourth grade in Rutherford, New Jersey. If I could find her, I would probably get in touch with her too. But high school is the best I can do. So yeah, high school, college, law school, Air Force. I'm the Air Force reunion organizing guy. My fraternity in college, yeah, I put that reunion together every year. It's just, so relationships come naturally to me, and you could call it a curiosity of people, but for a lot of folks, it's just I'm the gum on your shoe. I won't go away until you tell me stop organizing these damn reunions.
Well, and I
it's
think
not.
the curiosity is such an interesting note, Tony, because so you have a growing and successful plane giving practice that started around 2003, and then 7 years later, that curiosity, in part influenced by stand-up comedy, leads you to the launch of nonprofit radio. So talk to us about how that came about, the idea, and getting it off the ground, and then connecting the dots back to the curiosity side.
I gotta tell you guys, this is so much fun. Nobody ever talks to me about this. Not
That's
that
what
I
we're
hide
here for,
it.
man.
No,
You're always
I
asking the questions, right?
yeah, no, I am. Well, on my podcast, certainly, yeah. But no, I appreciate your interest in my background. Thank you, thank you.
You're so
What was the
welcome.
question? No, I remember the question. So a few things go into the podcast. Yes, I've done stand-up comedy. I've taken stand-up comedy classes, but I've also performed stand-up comedy. I've taken classes and performed improvisation, group improv. So these are all the factors that go into the creation of the podcast. I look at, when I see a microphone standing alone, I don't care if it's a floor stand or on a table. To me, an empty mic looks like a lonely friend. I have to go and talk to it. I'm drawn to empty mics, so that helps. Curiosity about people, of course, as I talked about. Love of planned giving, but the podcast goes way beyond planned giving. But love of generally supporting small and mid-sized nonprofits. My practice is planned giving. I teach an online course, Planned Giving Accelerator. My company is Martignetti Planned Giving Advisors. I'm all in on planned giving. But beyond that, nonprofits struggle with a lot more than just planned giving, a lot more than just fundraising. And so I wanted to help small and mid-sized nonprofits with everything that they struggle with. So my curiosity of people leads me to pick their brains, people who are experts in all the other areas that I'm not. And that's broad. I'm narrow and deep in planned giving. But if you want to go beyond that, if you want to talk about monthly sustainer giving, I need an expert. You want to talk about board relationships, legal, technology, social media, marketing, communications, branding, volunteer management, your board relationship, all those and lot more, lots more topics. I need to pick the brains of experts. So put all those things together.
With the launch of the radio, I mean, like, yeah, this is a big stew that kind of comes together.
Right. And then podcasting was emerging, and I bought a mic and it was lonely, so I started talking to it with other people. Podcasting was emerging as a method, and going back to my high school days, I needed to talk to microphones. So you put all that together, and I thought, well, what the hell? I don't know podcasting, but I've learned other things. I can learn that too. So I had no idea what I was doing. The conventional wisdom, I guess, was supposed to have 6 shows lined up in advance, so people see that there's some archive, some value to the program. You're not just going to be a one-off. Well, I didn't do that. I did one a week, and so I probably lost half my listeners. But whatever. I lost a lot of listeners because I didn't have 6. Week 1, I had 1. Week 2, I had 2, etc. But now we're in week 650, and I've got 650 shows. So I guess I figured it out along the way.
Yeah. Curious some of the lessons that you've learned through the 650 shows, just, in terms of, obviously you're always learning through the guests that you bring on and the various areas of the nonprofit space that you tackle. But specifically about the production of the creation of a podcast, and especially one that has grown to the extent and the reach that yours has. Who were some of the people that you looked at? What were some of the lessons that you've drawn from that experience over the last 13 years?
Lesson number 1 is probably consistency. I do a show. I'm committed to doing a show every single week, 50 a year. I take 2 weeks off around the holidays. That helps me. That way I'm not putting it off. It's a busy week. Ends up being a busy month. Well, now it's been a busy 8 weeks, and now I have to apologize in my next show for being away for 2 months. Meanwhile, people drop off. So consistency helps me. I'm committed to it once a week. It has to be done. It also helps me attract sponsors. I've been very lucky that I've had lots of corporate sponsors through the years, helped offset the expenses of going to NTC, that nonprofit technology conference that you asked about, Justin. Lots of sponsors, corporate sponsors through the years, and they like consistency. They want to know that, if you want to attract sponsors to your podcast, I think consistency and also longevity are valuable, because a sponsor isn't going to want something that they're not going to know the production schedule of, right? They don't even know, well, in 6 months, how many episodes are we going to get? Well, you'll probably get around 8 or 10, but we're not sure. That's no good, So 6 months, you're going to get 25 episodes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, in the theme of curiosity that we have going here, I'm curious. 13 years of doing this and 650 episodes, there have to be some really fun stories or really memorable guests that you've had on. Can you think of like a story that you could share? It could be anonymous if you don't want to name the person or whatever, but Yeah. What do you have in terms of fun stories from doing this?
The time that Beth Cantor said on my show twice. She was talking about a nonprofit. I think it's called Sharks, I think. I could be wrong about that, but um, she said it twice, and I kept it. She was embarrassed, but then she said it again, so she must not. She doubled down, so she must not have been too embarrassed. That was years ago. I think that was at a conference. I'm pretty sure I was talking to her at one of the nonprofit technology conferences years ago. So that's that lighthearted moment. You can go to TonyMartignetti.com. You could search Beth's name, and all her appearances would come up. And I didn't flag it as this is the show where Beth Cantor says. So you're gonna have to listen to her. You're gonna have to listen to several because she's been on a bunch of times. But yeah, there was the time that we were at a different conference. I don't think this was a nonprofit technology conference. Through the years, I had explored other conferences, but I just end up sticking with nonprofit technology conference because they're the ones who see the value of working with me the most. But I think this was a different conference. This woman was just having a bad day, and she walked off. I was just asking her normal questions about her area of expertise, which would have been what her seminar topic was about at this conference. And yeah, I felt terrible, but I wasn't putting upon her any more than any other guest. Just she was having a bad day, and she's after I don't know 5 or 7 minutes, she just walked off. She couldn't do it.
Just no comment,
And
just walk, just
just
straight up,
left.
just
Just
drop the mic and walk.
took her headset off, got up out of the chair, and said, "I can't do this."
Hmm.
So, and I felt bad for her. At first I was flustered, and then I just felt bad. So that was, that's unusual. I used to do
That's
the
where
show.
that's where those improv skills come in, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I was, well, these were recordings. These were all recordings.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
I just didn't use the recording. I'm certainly
Just
not
bailed
gonna,
on that one.
wasn't
Yeah.
gonna embarrass them. Yeah, that was just right. That just never got released. I used to do the show in a studio in New York City. The first several years, so 2010 to probably 2017 or so, 18 even after I left New York City and I moved to North Carolina, I kept using the studio. We would connect on I think he used Facebook Live to connect us. So for many years I had a studio connection, and the show was live every Friday. So I liked having a live audience. Small, like 15 people listening live or something. The vast majority was always the podcast. But so once a studio guest came in, huffing and puffing, he was overweight. Subway was running late. You had to walk up a bunch of stairs to get to our studio. He was running down the hall. He was running down the streets, and then he ran up the stairs. And he needed a few minutes to get the flush out of his face. Had a drink of water. I was a little concerned about my Boy Scout CPR skills having to come to the fore, but he was okay. And now we laugh about it. I'm not gonna embarrass him because I don't want to embarrass him, but he and I laugh about it. And we've laughed about it on the show since then. He's certainly been a guest, and his heart is fine. Just was a little flustered at the moment. Little red faced.
Little red faced. The thing about it is, I think even the longer that you do something, right, you do develop that list of moments, and they become canon as a part of the with you and those guests, with you and the team. And I know Ronnie and I can attest to the same thing. A handful of years behind you of just you just have those kind of funny moments that pop up over time. And so, but even to this day, Tony, the nonprofit radio isn't your only gig. You've got the Playing Giving Accelerator. You continue to do Playing Giving courses on the consulting side. And so, I would love for you to share both from the Playing Giving Accelerator side now, as you look back, and the nonprofit radio side now, not necessarily the funny moments, but just kind of some of the seminal moments, and especially the folks that have left a mark on you, that you're carrying forward. You know, you mentioned Sharp and others, but just curious as you think about the work that you continue to do. Who are the people um, that you have been impacted by, and what are the lessons that you are hoping to impart on those that you encounter as you think about the impact that you're making on others in your consulting work and in your podcast work?
What a gracious question. Thank you, Justin. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. I have two tracks to my work. I'm a planned giving consultant, fundraising consultant, and so nonprofits can hire me on a retainer basis, and I help them grow or launch or grow their planned giving. And then I also have Planned Giving Accelerator, which is an online course that I teach just once a year, every March through end of May. So it's just 3 months, March, April, May. So the next one will be in 2024. And so the memorable folks come from those two different tracks. And I would say on the consulting side, it's the donors who stay with me. You know, there's a healthcare agency that I work for in New York City, and one of their donors is 99 years old. I was with her on her 99th birthday last year, and I hope I'll be with her for her 100th birthday this year. And she's just an inspiration. You know, she lives alone. She has her mental faculties for the most part. You know, she's more forgetful than most of us, you know, in details, but she's 99 years old. But she's able to live alone, take care of herself. I find that so inspiring, you know, so moving. She's content in her life. She has her papers, the newspapers that she reads. She has opera recordings that she listens to. She's found contentment at 99. That, as I said, inspirational. And I'll even shout her out, just her first name, Marion. First name is Marion. And then on the Planned Giving Accelerator side, and on the consulting side, there are certainly other donors who inspire me too. Just they're older, they're in their 80s or 90s. Yeah, I should mention these folks. And just they've made a life. Obviously now they're all retired, but they've made lives that they're enjoying for the most part. You know, some folks don't enjoy that. You know, some folks become infirm in their 80s, 90s, or even earlier 70s. But most folks have made a life of contentment for themselves, and that's really it moves me to just find contentment in my life even today. I don't have to wait till I turn 75 to be content. So I aspire to contentment. You know, that's why I live on the beach. The ocean is across the street. If I look that way instead of at you two, I can see the ocean, and it's there every day. It's very reassuring. It's there every morning I wake up. So a life of contentment, around my consulting too, and the other work I do. And then on the Planned Giving Accelerator side, I'd say the inspirations have been some of the alumni who have raised literally millions of dollars from what they've learned through the accelerator. There's a small humane society in a small town in Georgia. I could shout them out. I think she's proud of the work. Athens Area Humane Society, Athens, Georgia. Cheryl McCormick is the CEO. She was the person from the Humane Society that was in my accelerator course, and she's raised over close to $4.5 million in planned gift commitments from what she learned in the accelerator. That's enormous. It's a small agency. I think their annual budget is, I know their annual budget is under $1 million. I think it's like a half or $750,000 million, their annual budget. They've got over close to $4.5 million in commitments.
That's incredible.
And that's an outlier. She's done very, very well, but there's another small agency in Oregon that's raised $265,000 in commitments. There's an organization outside Chicago, Illinois. I think that's also a humane society. About $2.5 million in commitments. An arts agency in New York City, $65,000 in commitments, and then plus a lifetime gift. They were talking about a planned gift, and someone committed to made a lifetime gift while they were talking about the planned gift commitment that the person also made. So, these kinds of outcomes. 5 new board gifts at another organization. There was a child development agency that happened to also be in Georgia. 5 new board gifts from what we learned, what she learned in Planned Giving Accelerator. So those alumni experiences move me on the accelerator side.
That's incredible, man. I mean, and I think, Tony, one of the things that Ronnie and I love about these conversations is that as we explore someone's journey and path, there's always this thing that just it just loops back. And something that I appreciate that we're hearing from you is the loop of curiosity into coaching, into inspiration, and that there's a cycle that happens there in your work and how you've put your life towards the nonprofit space, whether or not that's on the Planned Giving side or even through the conversations that you have on the radio side. And that's worth celebrating, worth noting. So we really do appreciate what you do and the part of the public square that you occupy in the nonprofit land of helping spur organizations on and tell great stories, for sure.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Justin. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for hosting. Ronnie, thank you.
We're super thankful for you sharing some time with us today. If any of our listeners want to connect with you, find out more about the Planned Giving work, or listen to the radio program, where can they find you?
You can reach me directly if you like. Use my email, tony@tonymartignetti.com. If you want to learn about Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio, my podcast, that's at tonymartignetti.com. If you want to learn more about Planned Giving Accelerator, it's at the aptly named site, plannedgivingaccelerator.com.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, man. Thank you so much. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We really, it wasn't nearly as intimidating as Ronnie thought it was going to be.
Thanks to each of you. I do appreciate your interest in my background. Thanks to each of you. Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks, Justin.
Right on.